Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I have a few documents with me that I would table at the end to validate and confirm, present as evidence of what I say. I will be brief today. Madam Speaker, I rise to make my contribution to this tax bill. Our financial service sector is one of the pillars of our economy, and many well-paying jobs exist in the Bahamas in financial services and related businesses. We have had a difficult time in financial services the past 2 decades due to an assault on our industry by developed countries. They want more tax revenue from their citizens and businesses held by companies in jurisdictions such as the Bahamas. As a result, Madam Speaker, they have unleashed series after series of requirements that all seem to have the purpose of forcing small countries out of the financial service sector. They have unfairly perceived us as jurisdictions through which to just evade taxes and avoid responsible financial practices. Both, I repeat, both political parties while in office have had to deal with blacklisting. These have been painful episodes which required first-hand attention by attorneys, attorney general, and prime ministers traveling the world to protect our economy. The Davis administration is attempting to act in a preemptive fashion to please the developed nations through the passage of this legislation. Via this bill, the Bahamas is implementing a corporate income tax. In announcing this corporate income initiative in February, the Office of the Prime Minister noted that it is, I quote, a significant measure under the OECD's Pillar 2 tax framework aimed at ensuring multinational enterprises, MNEs, operating within the Bahamas pay their fair share of taxes, end quote. The proposed 15% corporate income tax targets multinational enterprises with annual turnovers exceeding 750 million euros. And with this bill, the government is seeking to get on board with the global push to ensure corporations pay at least a 15% income tax. The government projects this new tax will bring in approximately $140 million per year. Will this bill satisfy the developed countries? We will see over time. These countries consistently move the goalpost when it comes to small, developing countries who are part of the global financial sector service. Complying on this measure will not stop the developed states from viewing some other part of our sector as problematic. This is the difficulty we face trying to survive in financial services. The Davis administration, Madam Speaker, will need to be watchful of their next move and continue to defend the Bahamas' right to be part of the global financial sector. Madam Speaker, as mentioned earlier, in speaking of this bill, the administration says it should bring in $140 million in revenue per year. That is a hopeful estimate, of course. With the passage and subsequent enforcement of this legislation, some companies may subsequently leave our jurisdiction. And despite the global efforts to make this 15% threshold standard, there will be other jurisdictions that do not impose a corporate income tax. Some companies may leave to go to those jurisdictions. And other companies may leave the Bahamas because their home jurisdiction has a similar 15% tax. They may choose just to pay their 15% at home as opposed to here in the Bahamas. And the government must be realistic about this. We will not know the full impact of the passage of this law until it is enacted. This is really a reality. Similarly, we will not know the new revenue it will bring in until the end of the first year of its enactment. However, we all hope the government's projection is correct. Correspondingly, the Bahamas needs new ways of generating tax dollars. New tax revenue could go towards better schools, roads, and other infrastructure. We will see how much of the projected $140 million per year in new revenue will actually be realized. That said, Madam Speaker, some new money will come into the Treasury. With that, I would like to ask the Prime Minister yet again to please, I beg, please, remove the 10% tax he imposed so heartlessly on bread basket items. Madam Speaker, this is having great, devastating negative effect on the ordinary man. So I ask again, for God's sake, let's move the bread basket tax. Madam Speaker, if new tax money is coming in, then he should have the compassion to lessen the burden on the working Bahamian. Let's try and find ways of reducing tax to many of our ordinary citizens. And that was why, Madam Speaker, we had introduced the tax-free over-the-hill incentive zone. Madam Speaker, within the over-the-hill community, business license no longer exist. It was exemption. There were no taxes, import duty for vehicles that you were bringing in for your businesses. There were no duty on supplies, construction material for the construction or expansion of your businesses. There were no real property tax in such facilities, all to help the ordinary man. There were entrepreneurial training programs, partnership between the over-the-hill community and the Small Business Development Center. And Madam Speaker, such programs were able to create 142 jobs in the over-the-hill community. And they had generated a revenue of $4.8 million within that community. Let's look at it, Madam Speaker. That was a zone that incorporated only a certain sector of the over the Hill community. Had we expanded, or if you, the government, expanded to Angliston, to St. Barnabas, to Fox Hill, areas that need assistance, the sectors of Camp Road, the Gambia, the sectors of Fort Charlotte. Madam Speaker, rather than 142 jobs in those communities, 852 jobs would have been created. And in addition, $28.8 million in revenue would have been generated. But instead, I listened to the Deputy Prime Minister this morning, and I wrote down what he said. I quote, "We are the party for people." A party for people would not cancel such a program and remove all those incentives from individuals within such community. A party for the people would have extended such program. It would have been extended already so that that $28.8 million could have been flowing and floating throughout those communities. Within the community at that time, Madam Speaker, murder rate had decreased. The evidence is there. Armed robbery had decreased. The evidence is there. Madam Speaker, all I say is we must give the small or the ordinary man even greater opportunities. I do not have a problem with privatizing government enterprises or sectors of government. Where I do have a problem is when it's privatized to the benefit of only a few, a select few, whom I call oligarchs. All I ask is to extend it. Allow the shares to be within a reasonable rate so that individuals can participate at $1,000, not $50,000. Not many people have $50,000. Then as you expand to the power plant that's going at Iraqi, again, that's going to be producing millions and millions of dollars. Allow the ordinary man to become a part. He wants to try and elevate himself to the middle class. But you cannot sell a share at $1 million. How many of us can afford $1 million? All I say, I don't have a problem with privatizing. I do have a problem with excluding the average Bahamian. Alive just went and issued shares, but their shares started at $1,000 so that individuals can become involved. So I asked the government to have that re-looked at so that the ordinary man would benefit, not the oligarchs, because we will have further income inequality in this country. We will have further poverty. And somebody, it cannot be Angliston alone, somebody must stand up for the poor man, for the ordinary man. And Angliston, I congratulate you because you stand firm with every poor, ordinary man in this country. Madam Speaker, inflation has eaten up the savings of Bahamian households over the past few years. The recent study from the University of Bahamas saying that to be middle class, a student of 4 in New Providence needs to earn $10,200 per month. Demonstrates how small our middle class is. Few homes bring that in. The cost of living index worldwide. Most expensive country to live, Switzerland. Number 2 is the Bahamas. Wow. Number 3 is Iceland. And number 4 is Singapore. Madam Speaker, it can only get worse. So we have to remove the tax burden on the poor man. Outside of that, we will hear about more people staying in their cars We will hear more people becoming homeless. We will hear about more people suffering. And sooner or later, malnutrition within this country will start to increase, Madam Speaker. Global inflation plus the brave Davis inflation from the BPL and bread basket hikes, prescription drugs, real property tax, higher taxes and fees, and the gas price make this worse. I beg again, please, end the bread basket tax. It was always a bad idea. End the prescription drug tax. Individuals today has to make choices. Do they buy medication or do they buy food? Food is more important to them, to all of us. So we choose food over medicine. Then our hospitals become filled with ill patients and we wonder why. For God's sake, help the poor, stop the tax. Reduce the taxation that the poor is subjected to, that the ordinary man is subjected to. It is not too late, Madam Speaker, to do the right thing. It is all up to the Prime Minister and the Minister of Finance. It is he who decides whether this cruel tax continues or whether it goes away. Now I hear over and over among you and people interviewed, but the Prime Minister is a compassionate and nice man. So I asked him, if you are as compassionate as they say you are, then reduce the taxes on the ordinary man. Right now, the Prime Minister is choosing to punish the people through this tax like a pharaoh of old. It is time to end this tax, Madam Speaker. It is only causing suffering. Madam Speaker, the objective of this bill is to tax foreign multinationals that operate in the Bahamas via our offshore financial services sector. When the Prime Minister spoke in the mid-year budget debate, he said the proposed law would not directly affect Bahamian-owned ventures. However, when the bill was tabled here last month, the Deputy Prime Minister, who is also the Minister of Investment, said, and I quote, "Very few Bahamian-owned and operated businesses would be impacted." Let me repeat. He said, I quote, "Very few Bahamian-owned and operated businesses would be impacted," end quote. My question is, Madam Speaker, are there Bahamian businesses that will be impacted by this legislation? If so, has the government consulted specifically with these businesses to inform them that they will be liable to paying this new tax? I hope this was done, as there was a general consultation period for this bill. Do we want to put a surprise tax on a few Bahamian businesses? Madam Speaker, as time is getting near, I wish to raise a very troubling revelation that is being exposed by the press. It concerns the hiring by the Davis administration of a Mr. Daniel Liu as a special envoy working for the government of the Bahamas. Why are the details of this hiring being kept secret? We need fuller information and details. Who exactly is this gentleman? Why is he a special envoy for the Bahamas? Who requested that he be made a special envoy? I wish to begin, Madam Speaker, with some background. On December 2022, a story in the Tribune reported, I quote, "Emails tabled in the New York State Supreme Court on Friday revealed that Daniel Liu, China Construction America, CCA, Bahamas Senior Vice President, made an urgent request for help within days of Subaltern Bethel altering the agreement's wording to make clear that the .70-30 labor ratio in favor of Bahamians applied to construction workers only. The document filed as part of Starker's Ismailian $2.25 billion fraud and breach of contract claim against the Chinese state-owned contractor over Bahamas' failure, disclosed that the person he reached out to for help was Subaltern's son, Leslie. Further went on, he advised that the issue was politically problematic for the Prime Minister, given the government's stance about ensuring Bahamians must come first in all areas of life, especially on job and economic opportunities. Mr. Bethel later described his father as one of CCA's biggest supporters, adding that there were others in the cabinet who might not see things the same as OPM, where Subaltern worked as Mr. Christie's senior policy advisor and ultimately as the government's lead in resolving the Bahama dispute, and ultimately led to Mr. Ismailian's oyster as developer owner. The story went on. Mr. Liu, in July 6, 2017, emailed to fellow CCA executives, as well as the contractor's ultimate boss, wrote, quote, "We should take advantage of the Bahamas government. If the government, Export-Import Bank of China, and CCA join forces, we can turn passive into active." This is being interpreted by Mr. Ismailian and his legal team as evidence that CCA's desire to oust Bahamas' original developer at any price. So what, Madam Speaker, what exactly is Mr. Daniel Liu's special relationship to the government, the PLP? What key PLP figures did or does he have relationship with the Christie administration and the Davis administration, including current and former cabinet ministers? If you listen to what I said initially.
Madam Speaker, I move that we take a 10-minute break.
Thank you, honorable members. It's been moved and seconded that the business of this House be suspended for 10 minutes. As many in favor remain seated, those opposed will stand. The motion is carried. The business of this House is suspended for 10 minutes.
Honorable Member for Kalani, I presume you're ready to continue.
I'm coming to my conclusion. What role did Mr. Liu play in the Bahama-related issues now swirling around the PLP after a court ruling in the United States in favor of the original developer of the mega resort? Now we are seeing a disturbing report in yesterday's Tribune. The story noted a senior China Construction America CCA executive who played a key role in the Bahama dispute appears to have further prospered through being appointed a special envoy by the Bahamian government. Daniel Liu, CCA's former senior vice president, who featured prominently in the section of the New York Supreme Court ruling that found the Chinese state-owned contractor actively worked to curry favor with the Bahamian government, has disclosed in his biography that the Davis administration last year made him a special envoy to China. The revelation is made towards the back of a 16-page brochure for an entity named Silver Star Management Group Company, for which Mr. Liu is named as the president and managing director. In the year 2023, Mr. Liu was officially approved from Bahamas government a special envoy to China, it proudly states. The Tribune story also reported a key ally of Sarkis Ismailian, Bahamas' original developer, says Mr. Liu's biography details an appointment, raised questions over whether he has been rewarded by the government for his role in the dispute, despite the recent New York court ruling which found CCA committed multiple frauds and breaches. This question needs to be thoroughly investigated and answered. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Deputy, there are a number of urgent questions that need to be answered by the Prime Minister and his government. Is Mr. Liu a Bahamian citizen? Is he also a citizen of any other countries? If so, when was he granted citizenship and under what circumstances? If he was granted citizenship, did he receive it in 2023, around the time that he was also made an envoy? Why was he given special status as a special envoy? And does he have a diplomatic passport? Has he been vetted by the Security and Intelligence Branch in order to serve as a special envoy? Is he ordinarily resident of the Bahamas? Would the Prime Minister please note his involvement in the special envoy status and contract for Mr. Liu, especially as diplomatic appointments at this level require the direct involvement of the Prime Minister? What are the nature and details of his contracts with the Bahamas government, and how much is he being paid? Why has information on him and his work for the Bahamas been kept secret? Is he an agent for any other government, and do any of his domestic or foreign contracts place him in any conflict of interest? What is the nature of his Silver Star business? And where is this business registered? And where does it pay taxes? What kind of business is it? Mr. Deputy, these questions need to be answered. Once again, I repeat the call made by many for a full investigation into certain matters related to Bahama under the Christie administration. The current PLP government must take this matter more seriously, including the potential negative fallout in investor confidence in the Bahamas. Mr. Deputy, I support this tax bill that we've been debating here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. As many.